Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are taking on a really challenging stack of source material.
Yeah, this one is pretty unique. It's this blend of a personal memoir, one forged in just extreme suffering, and it's fused with this really radical metaphysical critique.
And our mission here is to pull out the foundational wisdom from that. We're going to be diving deep into, the architecture of modern suffering.
Specifically, we're looking at what the sources call the veil of illusions.
Right. Who benefits from that veil? And crucially, what happens when it's just completely shattered by surrender?
And it is an intense journey. I mean, the authority here comes from someone who really hit the absolute bottom. We're talking homelessness, severe addiction, being institutionalized.
And they use that viewpoint, that rock bottom, to critique not just their own life, but the whole system.
Exactly. The argument is that, your personal hell is just a little mirror of much bigger structural global hell. So we're really trying to pull out the universal insights from this very, very personal story of dissolution and awakening.
Okay, so our deep dive today has three parts. First, we're going to diagnose the disease, the system, the lie, and the vested interest in keeping it all going.
Then second, we'll look at the only way out according to the source, which paradoxically involves total defeat.
The collapse of personal control.
Right. And then finally, we'll get into the really profound shift in reality that happens when that veil dissolves, which the sources call remembering home.
All right, let's jump straight into it. Section 1, the critique of modern life. The language the source uses is just. It's incredibly sharp. It doesn't just say modern life is imperfect, it calls it a deliberate failure.
Oh, yeah. Phrases like a circus, a psychiatric ward of security slavery.
And a freak show of cars and chaos and consumerism. I mean, it's suggesting the madness we see every day that's the point. It's the rule, not the exception.
And the core of that whole critique rests on what they call the great lie.
Okay, what's the great lie?
The sources argue that we're basically trapped in a kind of simulation. You can call it the simulacra, the matrix. In Gnostic terms, it's the realm of the demiurge.
And the success of this simulation, it hinges on one thing.
It hinges on convincing every single person that the problem is them. It's your personal failing, your chemical imbalance, your lack of willpower.
And not the system itself.
Never the system. It's a structural, environmental trap. But if everyone thinks they're the problem, they never look at the trap itself.
So the trap isn't made of chains, it's made of distraction.
And comparison.
Concisely. The whole goal of this simulation is to just relentlessly distract us with what the source calls impermanent spectacle.
So like the 24/7 news cycle, our social media feeds.
The celebrity updates, the culture wars, all of it. It's all designed to enforce this scarcity mindset and a competitive view of the world. It's that whole, my God penis country guru bank account is bigger and better than yours, loser.
And if you're constantly stuck in that mode of comparing and measuring and striving, you can never, ever find inner peace. Or, more importantly, any kind of structural insight into what's actually happening.
And the result of that, according to the sources, is we can't tell the difference between our own pain and the world's pain. We internalize all of it as our own fault.
It's a brilliant move, systemically speaking. I mean, if everyone sees their anxiety as just their own personal, unique neurosis, they never band together.
They never see the shared environment causing the distress.
Right. We just stay focused on these surface-level, completely theatrical diversions.
The sources use some really good anecdotal observations to show how deep this dream world, as they call it, really is.
Yeah, the absurdity of just routine life is a big theme. The source points to, people arguing with genuine passion over sports teams or celebrity gossip.
Or two-party politics.
While just completely ignoring the real devastating suffering happening, right in their own cities, let alone globally.
There's a description of the accepted life script that's just fundamentally absurd.
It is. You work for 40 years, you pay off a huge mortgage, you rack up debt. And for what? To get to your deathbed and hope your kids get a glimpse of what is awaiting them.
Which is just this same cycle all over again.
The same weary, debt-ridden cycle. It paints a really bleak picture of what you get for complying with the system.
And this leads to maybe the most jarring point in the material. The comparison between this whole simulacra and the rush from hard drugs.
Yeah, that's a tough one to read, but it's a statement about, let's call it vibrational density. The author, writing from the perspective of an active meth addict, argues that the endless temptation menu, the system offers.
Things like Bitcoin, a promotion, a new car.
All of that stuff. It's all just watered down, low vibration content. And in comparison, the immediate overwhelming rush of white smoke methamphetamine becomes, in a way, a superior form of temporary ecstasy.
Because it's a tangible, immediate escape from that reality.
Exactly. It's a short circuit. It just cuts through that low-level hum of anxiety the simulacra produces, the author's admission. And it's a disturbing one. Even to this day, I'll take the meth pipe over the simulacra. That's not an endorsement of drug use.
No, it's a critique of the system.
It's arguing that the sheer, bland, soul-crushing mediocrity of the accepted dream is so toxic that a pure, destructive, immediate chaos feels better. It just highlights the system's total failure to provide any genuine meaning.
Okay, so that's the effect, the lie. Let's move to the cause, the motive. The sources talk about the architects of the race.
Right, and they're not painted as pure evil necessarily. They're driven by fear, specifically the fear of their own mortality, their expiration dates.
So they build these permanent controlling civilizations to try and, outrun death.
That's the idea. They project that fear onto the whole system. And the system isn't, a government in a specific building. The source says it's an amorphous collective mindset. It is legion.
And the key mechanism for control, the system's vested interest, is described as vampiric. It's about mining humanity for energy.
The industrial ruling class mines our energy by trapping us in what it calls the grubber breeder shuffle.
The grubber breeder shuffle. Let's break that down.
It's the survival loop that keeps us focused on external things. The cycle of working just to pay rent or a mortgage, having kids who need resources, and then constantly consuming to get a little hit of reward.
So the structure of society, things like debt, consumerism, it's all designed to make sure our energy is spent on survival, not on insight.
That's the whole point. Student debt locks you into a career you might hate. A mortgage makes sure you're a compliant employee for 30 years, no matter how meaningless the job feels.
And the constant need to consume is fueled by an insecurity that the system itself creates.
Exactly. So we use all our creative power to feed this machine. It's a scenario where, unlike the machines in the Matrix, we are willingly plugging ourselves in. We're feeding on ourselves for the sake of a security that isn't even real.
So to counter the official story, the one about growth and progress, the sources hit you with a statistical reality check. They call it the minus column.
And the numbers are just horrific.
Yeah.
Because they prove the system is actually succeeding at what it's designed to do, even as it fails its stated purpose.
Give us some examples.
Okay, so we see 822 million people globally are undernourished. A child starves to death every 10 seconds.
Wow.
Nearly half the planet, 3.5 billion people, live in poverty. And you can see the psychological cost, too. Over 1 billion diagnosed with mental illness, and the source speculates the real number is probably double that.
And the disparity in how we allocate resources just lays it all bare.
It's completely backwards. Global annual military spending is over $2.7 trillion.
Okay.
The estimated cost to end world hunger? $40 billion.
It's not even close.
It's not a problem of capability, it's a problem of priority. And the point the source drives home is that this inequality exists because the people who benefit from it have no incentive to fix the very systems that grant them power.
Changing it would mean giving up the power they're so afraid of losing.
Exactly. So the system is designed to preserve itself. And it uses what the source calls the quiet religion of classism to manage the rest of us, the bewildered herd.
Classism as the invisible caste system.
Yes. And it works by just overwhelming the public with distraction, the screens, the algorithmic circus. You keep the masses bewildered by focusing all their attention on theatrical stuff.
The culture wars, the two-party political drama.
Right, where all the real decisions are made behind closed doors anyway. It stops people from ever focusing on the real issue, which is the massive upward transfer of wealth and control. The noise is a defense mechanism.
And the education system, which we're told is the great equalizer, is presented here as another tool for keeping things the way they are.
The critique is that the system doesn't necessarily hide knowledge, but it fails to build the muscle for critical, independent thought.
It creates graduates with credentials, but not the ability to question the foundation.
Exactly. It values rote learning, compliance. And the source argues that intellectual advantage is routed by wealth. Affluent schools might encourage debate and how to think. Poorer districts often have to emphasize compliance and memorization teaching what to think.
Training people to be manageable parts in that grubber breeder shuffle.
I got it.
Which brings us to the final and maybe the most insidious delusion the system sells. The whole Enlightenment industry.
Yes. The system convinces us we are fundamentally broken and we need endless, complicated fixing.
This is the system co-opting the path to liberation itself.
It is. The proponents of this, who the source colorfully calls the ding-dongs and rattly-bobs, they sell inadequacy. They're selling you a secret in the form of a shovel, telling you if you just dig hard enough, you'll get somewhere.
Higher consciousness, financial freedom, enlightenment.
Whatever it is, it's always just over the next hill. This is what the source calls the diploma myth.
The belief that if you just climb enough ladders, put in the work, follow the guru, then at the moment of death, you'll finally be handed your diploma from Perfection University.
Right. And this whole idea assumes you start out imperfect, that you need to be fixed. The pursuit of becoming more is just a never-ending cycle of masturbatory fixing.
And the source says this is all pointless.
Completely pointless, because the self you're trying so hard to improve, that identity stitched together from insecurity and longing, it's temporary, it doesn't survive death. All that effort polishing the ego is, in the end, irrelevant.
It's like building an elaborate sandcastle while completely ignoring the ocean that's about to wash it away.
That's a perfect analogy. The source argues you were born complete. As a child, you were connected. Everything since, education, society, striving, has just been a slow eclipse of that original wholeness. The system sold you the disease, and now it's selling you a very expensive, complicated cure.
This even applies to something like mindfulness, trying to be present.
Oh, absolutely. The paradox of presence. The second you try to be present, you've already left it. You've moved into your head, into effort and intention.
You've turned being into an item on your to-do list.
Which is the signature move of the simulacra. The source sees the sickness and the supposed cure, if that cure involves effort and striving, as two sides of the same counterfeit coin. Both are based on the idea that you have to fix a broken version of yourself.
And that prevents the real insight.
Which is that the self doesn't need fixing. It needs complete dissolution.
Okay, so the failure of that whole fixing mentality leads us to the catalyst for real change, which is extreme pain.
And the realization of absolute powerlessness. This is where the memoir part of the source becomes so critical.
Right. The author's personal story, rock bottom, 95 pounds, in an institution, it's not presented as some unique tragedy.
No, it's presented as a compressed, sped-up version of the collective delusion. You know, the comfortable person gets a nice, slow 50-year slide into quiet desperation. The addict gets a mandatory, immediate meeting with their total lack of control.
And the moment of clarity happens in a place called the Last House. The description is so visceral, the white ghosts dancing in a glass meth pipe.
And he's still clinging to this idea that he's clever, that he can outsmart this. And then a counselor just gives him the brutal truth.
You have no idea how fucked you are, dude.
That's the first shock. But the real turning point, the real shift comes later, when the system's designed to help admit they've failed. He says he found relief when a therapist finally just said to him, "I've come to the realization that I cannot help you."
Why is it so transformative? Why is that a relief?
Because it shatters the final illusion of human control. As long as you believe an expert or a system can fix you, you're still holding on. You're still attached to the idea that you can manage the problem.
But when human aid fails, that's the end of the road.
It forces a complete surrender to something outside of your own intellect, your own will.
And the source describes this moment, realizing he's been placed beyond human aid, not with despair, but almost with joy.
Yes, like at a triumphant horn that opened up a portal to a brand new color. He realized the pain had finally gotten big enough to crush his stubborn will. It was the only way to stop the striving that defined his whole life. That absolute defeat is the prerequisite.
It's the only way through.
It's the only way out. This leads us to the very non-intuitive path.
Yeah.
The only way to escape the system's control is to completely, totally surrender.
It's the paradoxical freedom you get from admitting you've lost a game that was rigged from the start.
The sources bring up the remedy for a panic attack. You stop fighting it. You just invite it in. You say, go ahead and kill me. I don't care anymore.
And the attack just vanishes.
Yeah.
Because the fight was the problem.
That is the entire mechanism, just applied on a metaphysical level. It lines up perfectly with that Doug Stanhope quote.
I think I know the one.
The only true freedom that you find is when you realize and come to terms with the fact that you are completely and unapologetically fucked. And then you are free to float around the system.
As long as you're fighting the matrix, you're giving it your energy.
Defeat is the only victory.
And this means letting go of the self, of the identity. The very thing we've been taught to improve and defend our whole lives.
Yeah, that patchwork quilt stitched from insecurity and longing. That identity is the barrier.
Hmm.
The source notes the irony that, really intelligent people often have the hardest time with this,
Because they try to think their way out of the problem of the self.
which is structurally impossible. It's like trying to lift yourself up by your own bootstraps. The surrender has to be absolute. You can't be a little bit pregnant with transformation. The controlling agent has to be totally removed.
So after all that complexity, all the critique, the core wisdom of the sources boils down to something astonishingly simple.
It's 2 words: let go.
That's it.
That's a single message. Everything else, the critique of the architects, the statistics, the memoir, it's all just explaining why you should let go and why the self, on its own terms, can't ever do it.
But if absolute surrender is the key, the system has to have a final defense against it.
It does, and its most powerful defense is hope.
Hope. That's a radical idea. We're taught hope is a virtue.
The source reframes it completely. It references Pandora's box, where hope was the last thing left inside, and suggests hope was the worst thing found.
How so?
Hope is a dangling carrot. It keeps our problems on life support. It keeps us focused on a better future, which prevents us from seeing that reality, as it is right now, is already perfect.
Meaning it's already complete. It's already operating exactly as it's meant to.
Right, so that desire to fix the world, the if-only mindset, that's actually what keeps the whole broken structure going.
So raging against the system, against the financial institutions and the politicians,
Sure.
that's just managing symptoms.
That's what the source argues. It says greed and corruption are inevitable in a system built on separation and me and mine. So to focus your rage on the puppet masters, the Jamie Dimons or Klaus Schwabs of the world, it's actually counterproductive.
Because giving them your attention just feeds the disease. It keeps the illusion of their importance alive.
Exactly. The only real disruption is non-cooperation and disregard. The system runs on our willingness to be owned in exchange for security. The source says you make more of an impact petting your dog than you do an hour-long segment on the woes of capitalism.
The solution is internal dissolution, not external revolution.
Yeah, you stop feeding the monster and eventually it starves.
This brings us to the payoff then. The dissolution of the veil. What is actually found on the other side?
The source calls it remembering. And this moment, this profound recognition happens during that absolute surrender in the bathroom of the last house, looking in the mirror.
It's right after the counselor's final words to him. Everything you have ever believed was a lie. It's over. You've lost.
It's the psychological death. And when he looks in the mirror, he's not seeing his frail body. He's experiencing a sudden, total shift in perception.
He sees something else looking at me. A pure energy.
Yeah.
A silver cord. And this wasn't a hallucination.
No, it was a realization. And crucially, it wasn't new. It felt profoundly forgotten. Like waking up from amnesia and instantly recognizing your spouse. It was pure, instant recognition that came before any emotion.
The self-dissolve.
Leaving only the infinite current. And the wordless message that came through. It just encapsulates the nature of the source without any religious baggage.
What was the message?
It was simple. I got you. I love you. I have always loved you. You are everything. And this wasn't an intellectual idea. It was. It was immediate existential data. The tears that followed were tears of joy, something completely new to him. The feeling was one of dissolving, of having unbecame.
And you stressed that this wasn't just another powerful experience. It was something different.
It was the cessation of experience itself. The source defines it as what is before experience takes place. Every other high in his life was an itch being scratched, a dualistic thing of seeking and finding. This was the complete halting of all experience.
The bedrock.
The ultimate bedrock. It was the realization that the eternal self was never gone. It was just hidden by all the frantic seeking.
Okay, so let's try to define this source, this home. The material gets into some very non-dualistic ideas here.
It does. It references the concept of is-notice, which pulls from Gnostic traditions, things like the monad or Brahman.
For listeners who maybe haven't gone down that rabbit hole, how does the source explain it?
The basic idea is that the source is utterly whole, it's infinite. But to experience its own magnificence, it needed contrast. So it sort of split itself into countless pieces, creating the appearance of separation.
And that's where our reality comes from. The cosmic play, light and dark, joy and sorrow.
Exactly. So the amnesia, our forgetfulness of where we came from, That isn't a bug, it's a feature.
It's necessary for the game to work.
It's essential. If you knew you were the infinite source just playing a role, there'd be no drama, no stakes. Forgetting allows us to really taste the experience of being separate, of being in the material world.
So home isn't a place we have to travel to. It's not a reward we get later.
No, home is what's left when all the seeking stops. It's the unmarked and infinite canvas that's underneath every painting. It's beyond concepts like bliss or peace, which are just temporary states. It's unchanging, unborn, and utterly whole. It just is.
And this recognition is compared to the Gnostic idea of the bubbling spring.
Right, from the Gospel of Thomas. The bubbling spring is about a state of recognition, not a process of learning something new. You don't acquire this, you remember it. You become drunk with reality. There's nothing to add to your philosophy.
The realization is that everything you were chasing was already inside you the whole time.
Quietly laughing at the chase.
So once that fundamental truth is realized, that you are the source playing a part,
Yeah.
your whole perception of life has to change.
Dramatically. Life becomes weightless. It becomes temporary.
The source redefines it as a ride through some band of frequency in the infinite, an explored alleyway that will just blink out of existence.
The key concept becomes non-attachment. The intense emotional value we put on all these temporary forms, our jobs, our houses, even our relationships, it's misplaced. They are nothing more than ships in the night that you are placing more value on than the sea itself.
The sea is the source. The ships are just the temporary experiences.
No, and you are weightless, the source argues, until you believe you have weight by clinging to those ships.
Which completely undermines the whole engine of the simulacra, which is built on the idea that the individual identity is permanent and all-important.
Totally. The source points out, you come into this reality with no persona, you exit with no persona. The who and what and how are clothes that the why wears.
The why is the energy, the consciousness. The clothes are the roles we play.
Parent, CEO, addict, expert, all just clothes.
And if the identity is just clothing, then the idea of death itself has to change completely.
It leads to what the source calls the death of death. To call the scattering of atoms back into energy death is to miss the bigger picture. There was never truly a birth either, only shifting appearances.
The body burns out, the I am thought structure dissolves.
And what's left is the impersonal hum, the current that was always there. There's no personal self to reincarnate. Only the creativity itself is eternal.
Okay, so this brings us to the final section. Living beyond the veil. The path of what the source calls the black butterfly. If you've swallowed the red pill, how do you actually function in the matrix?
The grubber breeder shuffle is still there. You still have bills to pay.
So how do you participate without getting consumed by it all again? The answer seems to be this art of refusal.
And the key there is that fighting the system gives it power. The system is designed to create outrage, to get your attention. The path of the black butterfly isn't to rage against the machine. It's to acknowledge the illusion without getting into the fight.
This reminds me of the Buddha's interaction with Mara, the shadow figure.
It's the same principle. When Mara tried to tempt and distract the Buddha, he didn't fight him. He just said, "I see you, Mara." And once it was recognized as just an illusion, it lost its power and vanished.
So the art of refusal is seeing the algorithm trance, the headline diet, the pressure to turn your life into content.
And just choosing not to participate in that energy exchange, it's not apathy. The source says it's sanity.
And this detachment is what the system is most afraid of.
Without a doubt. The system has ways to deal with rebels. It has no defense against someone who learns not to be affected by it at all and refuse to participate.
If you stop feeding it your attention and your fear and your outrage,
The monster starves. When you decide to just float around the system, you're no longer a source of energy to be mined. You've pierced the noise, and that's a threat.
but practically, how do you do that day to day? So to pay your taxes, do your job.
The crucial difference is in the intention and the attachment. You do the necessary things, but with the understanding that they're just temporary movements in the cosmic play. They don't define you.
You stop believing your 401k is the measure of your soul.
Exactly. You participate, but neutrally. You minimize the emotional investment, and that stars the system of the very energy it wants to mine. The focus shifts from striving to just experiencing the ride.
This leads us to that ancient question then. If the source is pure and loving, why create a reality with all this suffering? Why this system of exploitation?
The source argues the purpose isn't punishment, it's illumination through contrast.
Light needs the dark to know itself.
That's the idea. The source split itself to experience its own nature, and the system, the dark, the illusion, the suffering, it's the necessary backdrop for that drama to play out. The suffering doesn't come from the dark itself.
It comes from misidentifying with the dark.
That's the core error, when we forget we are the light and start to believe we are the dark.
So the system, the darkness, it's not something to be hated.
It's just not you. And it's not where you are from. Our function is to use the dark to illuminate ourselves, not to believe the dark itself needs to be fixed. You'll never fix the dark because it's a structural part of the play. The moment you stop fighting it, you see its real supportive role.
Which lines up perfectly with what Carl Jung said about consciousness.
Jung's insight was that one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious.
The goal is just to see the illusion for what it is, to stop defending it.
And to refuse to confuse it with who you really are. If you can do that, the illusion loses all its power over you. You move beyond the whole struggle.
So the final distinction the sources make is between the lifers, the ones clinging to the illusion, and the black butterfly, the dissolved dissident who's remembered home.
It's a powerful image. Butterflies watching caterpillars dream of flight. The caterpillars, the lifers, they're busy protecting their little pupas, trying to build something permanent, defending the sandcastle. The system demands that the identity, the illusion, is what you are.
And the terror for the lifer is realizing that their whole life's work building, that self is perishable.
It is. So if that self dissolves completely, what's left? It can't just be nothingness.
What is the product of that surrender?
What's left isn't some new, improved identity you can put on your spiritual resume. What's left is the unending, undying stream of potential. It's realizing you're not a temporary creation. You are the eternal creativity itself. The construction fades, but the capacity for experience is infinite.
The black butterfly knows its form is irrelevant. Only the essence of flight matters.
So the ultimate choice the sources give us is, it's stark and it's simple. You can either remain attached to all the temporary forms and suffer the consequences, loss, fear, striving.
Or you can dissolve into the eternal current.
It's the choice between constant striving and immediate recognition. You either stay attached and keep suffering, or you accept the simple truth that the kingdom of heaven is laid out before men, but men do not see it.
They're too busy looking for it in all the noise to realize it's the silence underneath their own striving. So we've taken quite a journey today. We started with this devastating critique of the simulacra, the chaos, the systemic greed, the energy drain of the grubber breeder shuffle.
And we followed that argument to see how that terror is actually the necessary catalyst. It leads to absolute defeat.
Which is the only thing that can open the door to that profound recognition of the source, of home.
And the paradox is still the centerpiece, isn't it? The incredible complexity of the suffering is just dwarfed by the stunning simplicity of the solution.
The whole project of building and defending the self, of seeking more, is the very thing blocking the truth.
The wisdom isn't new, it's just remembered. It just requires you to drop everything that you are not.
The source notes that the dark, the illusion, it has a reason to exist, to teach us what we are not. So let's leave you with a final thought on that. Take a look at your own daily activity. How much of your anger, your striding, your constant fear of loss, or just your excessive effort, how much of it is solely dedicated to defending the things you ultimately are not? What would happen if you just let that massive defense project fall today?